I wish these two guys would get out of here. Okay, very good. How many people have been here for the first time? First time people. That's awesome. That's the future. That's the future of pinball right there. New people that don't even know that brand new pinball machines are built today, and they could buy them and they can play them on location, and that's what we're trying to work on. Trying to build the base. And if you didn't play Harry Potter yet, I think you should go play it because I think it's a good game. And I haven't had anybody tell me that it's not a good game. Um, and really, these are the people responsible for the game. There's more people that they represent. There's many more faces and people that they represent. People in the factory, people that bought parts to make these games, and people that load the truck, check the games, the assembly line workers. We can't do anything as an individual. We can only do it as a team. And these people have passion to really make things great. You know, anybody can make an okay game. Some people can make a good game. Not many people can make a great game. That game took about 50,000 hours of labor, men and women. It took millions of dollars. You know, the license was difficult to get. But if it wasn't a good game, it would just be Harry Potter with a game in there. Eric will tell you about what everybody did, and it's really amazing to see all the tiny little details that they covered. We're very proud of the game, and we're happy to bring it to the world. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric.
All right. Thanks, Jack. All right. Good evening, everybody. I hope you've all gotten to play the game. Show of hands. People have played Harry Potter. All right. Good. You have some familiarity with it. My name is Eric Meunier. I am a game designer at Jersey Jack. I have been with Jersey Jack Pinball for a third of my life. So I have 13 years at Jersey Jack. I grew up in this game industry. My parents were operators when I was a kid, which means I've been around games pretty much my whole life. I've been on the other side of things where I'm taking coins out of a cash box. I'm fixing games in a dark bar with only a screwdriver and a flashlight. A lot of that formed how I design games. I do my best to make games very serviceable. Upper playfields come off very easily. Mechanisms are easy to repair. That's something that I hold very dear to my heart. I want to make games that also make money for operators, right? Make games fun, make people enjoy the 3 minutes on average that they have with the game. Show them some of the cool stuff early on. But then, as an advanced player as well, I want to make a game that I really enjoy. So there is depth, there is breadth in all of the games that I've been a part of. And I really feel like Harry Potter is one of the greatest games that I've ever had the ability to make with some of the greatest people I've ever worked with. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about all the nitty-gritty details. Unfortunately, we have only like 40 minutes at this point, so we're going to go through things kind of quick. I'll introduce the team up here and kind of talk about a little bit about what they do. So first, we have Joe Katz, who is the lead programmer. So this is the first game that Joe and I have worked together on as leads. Joe has done a lot of really cool stuff in a lot of the games I've worked on. Really glad that he was my lead on this game because we made something awesome. All right, next up, we have our first time lead mechanical engineer, Dan Lachek. So Dan's job is to take all of the crazy stuff that I think up and make it actually work. And that's huge. Dan puts in the extra effort. This is one of the first games that I've made where I felt I had full trust in my mechanical engineer that he was going to do things the right way. And Dan never let me down. So thank you, Dan. All right, Jason Allen has been with JJP now for a few years. and Jason is working on code. Jason made a lot of the really fun stuff that you'll get to see and play in this game. Death Eater Multi-Ball is all out of this guy's head, and a bunch of other stuff. All right, next up we have Pierce Colbert. Pierce is responsible for a lot of the sound and music and audio in this game. So Pierce got to work with an industry legend on this game. David Thiel did a lot of the work and helped tutor Pierce in the way of ridiculously complex and crazy audio packages that go into pinball. So thank you, Pierce. All right, up next, we have the voice of the Sorting Hat.
Good evening.
So, Mr. Mark Silk has been in many films and television shows in his illustrious career. And Mark does the voice of the Sorting Hat everywhere you hear the Sorting Hat outside of the movies. So, Universal Studio, the Lego toys, the Hallmark ornaments, the Sorting Hat that you can put on your head, that is all Mr. Silk. And Mr. Silk is obsessed with pinball, like the rest of us. All right, next, Olaf Gremme is one of the Flying Dutchmen on the team, one of several Dutchmen who are part of our animation department. Olaf knocked it out of the park with some of the coolest animations I've ever seen in pinball, and we're going to see a lot of his work here on the screen. You see it every time you play the game. Olaf is awesome at what he does. Thank you, sir. And finally, legacy in programming, we have Mr. Duncan Brown. So Duncan had the wonderful job of writing firmware for one of the craziest mechs that we've ever made, which is the staircase mechanism. So Duncan got to turn that thing that we came up with into a functioning mechanism by making firmware code that is wild. So it's an art, and I'm really glad Duncan's on the team because he did the job that I certainly couldn't, and many other people cannot do. It is an art form to write code that good for low-level code, and it's so. Thank you, Duncan. All right, so let's get into this presentation. We're going to go through quite a bit of the game. So we're going to go over the playfield and talk about some of the concepts for how I was designing the game and what I was looking for in the game. Then we're going to go through some mechs. We're going to go through some rules in UI. We're not going to do a deep dive on too much of this stuff. Sound and voice, and then some time for questions. So up first, we have the fully built Harry Potter playfield. All right, there is a lot jam-packed into this game. What you're seeing is the fully developed game that has all of the shot paths on there. But what I wanted to share was a side-by-side of an unpopulated playfield. So you can see some of the shot paths that are kind of covered by other mechanisms. So we were doing a count before we published the game, and there are 48 unique ball paths on this game, which sounds pretty crazy. But working with Keith Johnson early on in my career on Pirates, Keith instilled in me this idea that a shot that can only go one place is not as interesting as a shot that can go many places. And I may have taken that to the extreme on a couple times. So for example, the staircase mechanism, there are 3 paths into that staircase, and there are 13 paths out of it, which is wild. I can't think of another mech in pinball that does anything similar. So the ability to put a ball in a right orbit and have it wind up in 14 or 15 different places gives versatility to the programmers. It makes it so the game stays interesting. When you know the rules, you do know where the ball is going to come out. One thing that I've heard a lot this weekend is, I have no idea where the ball is coming out. It's crazy. It's always going somewhere random. It's never random, actually. Once you've played the game and you understand the rules, you know exactly where that ball is going. You can tell by the lights on the playfield where it's going to wind up. Um, but a lot of where the ball winds up going has to do with the programming and the current rules you're in and the mode that you're playing and where we want the ball to wind up for your next shot. All right, let's take a look at mechanisms. So, big main mechanism in the middle of the playfield is the staircase. And the staircase was inspired by a game that I was playing with my children. It's a little tabletop marble logic puzzle. And it has these little cubes that you stack in here, and the map tells you start at point A, get to point B, and use these 5 elements from the game to get the ball there. I was mid-game with my kids when I said, this needs to be a pinball mech. Just the way these things turn, and you put the ball in here and it goes out that way, or you put the ball in here and it goes out that way, inspired me to 3D print the first concept of this mech. So there you see it. That is the moving staircase. That's what I brought to Dan along with that game. And I said, you need to play this game and go through it and understand where my crazy head's at. And I started taking these cubes and rotating them and putting the ball in and watching it come out a different path and a different path. So this is the start of it. There is a production staircase. What you see here, the final product, a lot of time and effort go into something that, I can hold in the palm of my hand. The number of iterations to get this mechanism to shoot the way it does on this game is in the dozens. And that doesn't just mean we tweaked a little thing and, hey, we have a new one. It was myself, Dan, and Joe, and other members of the team. We would make a small, minute tweak to the staircase or to the ramp into the staircase, meaning, what if we took the ramp flap and instead of it being 3/8 of an inch long, what if it were only 1/4 of an inch long? All right, build that, laser cut it, put it in the game, take 29 minutes 50. To take 50 minutes to take this part out, put this part in, and then shoot the game. And we would each shoot it 50 times with the glass on. Of course. We would shoot it each 50 times. We would record exactly how many successes we would get or how many failures we would get. And we would compare notes and we'd build a table and we'd look at, did we get a noticeable improvement? And if the answer is yes, we'd keep that variable. And then we would change something else. And we would change something else. And it was over the course of months that it took to refine this, always with the haunting specter hanging over that production release must happen. You cannot be late. You cannot delay. This must go out the door because tooling takes a long time. And shipping these parts take a long time. You have to get it right as soon as possible. So the number of late nights spent by Dan, mostly, is the champion of this mechanism who got it to work, is incountable. Thousands of man hours were put into just this one mechanism. And it's because of the passion that this team had that Dan got this mech to work and work the way it does in the game. And it turned into one of the coolest mechs that I think has ever been in pinball. So a little fun part that you can see here in the movie is, of course, all of the portraits in Hogwarts all move, right? They are magicked to appear that the person or figure inside is moving. So one of these details that I fought for, even though they are extremely expensive and difficult to manufacture, are lenticular images on all of the portraits in the staircase. So you can see Hedwig flapping her wings there. And if you look carefully at the game, you can see the moving portraits. All right, so the next mechanism I would consider is the upper playfield. There it is in all of its majesty. So this is how I prototype mechanisms or shots, right? What you see, the final product with the wire forms are actually pretty hard to make. I don't know, has anyone here ever tried making wire forms for a home brew or repairing them? It's challenging to bend 3D metal through 3D space and get it correct and get it accurate. So what I do is I will take that shape, I'll take that form, and I'll 3D print a trough that gives me the ball path fairly quickly and robustly. And then once I've nailed the path, I get the next step, which is starting to make the wire and fabricate the wire. So this is a Quidditch upper playfield. Wanted to capture all of the elements of Quidditch. So there's 3 different balls in the Quidditch pitch. There's the quaffle, there's the bludger, and there's, of course, the golden snitch. The golden snitch is everywhere in this game. It's on every shot, every switch, every stand-up target, and a big part of the game. But the other elements of Quidditch are all here, and for the Harry Potter fans, you can find them in this mechanism. Iterations. Iterations are something we do often. We fail fast. That is the most important lesson when you're making a pinball machine is get it real so you can make it better. Your idea on the computer screen doesn't work the first time. You have to physically make the real parts in the shop, get the game playable, shoot it, get other people to shoot it who are going to tell you that it sucks, and then you can make it better. That is what we do 100 times on every single part, on every single mechanism, making the parts better. And here's the final product. And you can see it looks similar to the first idea, but there's a lot of details that go into making this thing the way it is. All right, next mechanism is the wand ramp. This is one of those things that is a nod to the Harry Potter fans. Each of these wands is a 1-to-1 movie replica of the wands of the Golden Trio, Harry, Hermione, and Ron. I wanted there to be a 3-ball lock because I wanted to build a mode around the 3 characters in the game. So this is the 3-ball lock. Getting the balls onto here, getting the balls off of here, getting the tips of the wands to light up was something that is really cool. But my service brain kicked in. If I were to embed an LED in the end of this injection molded piece and that LED were to ever break, then you would have to scrap this entire part. So instead, we put the LEDs all the way in the back of the wand, and we use a standard part at Jersey Jack for these LEDs. And the wand actually lifts up over the LED, and there is fiber optic through the core of the wand. So it's a replaceable part in the back of the wand, and the wand should have no issues. All right, here's a glamour shot of the wands on the line. All right, next mechanism is the Death Eater. The Death Eater is a sculpture, and underneath it are 2 standard pinball parts that were put together in a really fun way. It's a drop target and it's a kickback. But those 2 standard pinball parts, when given to a cool programmer, can make some really fun elements happen, right? You're fighting a Death Eater. We wanted you to feel like you're on the brink of death. These people are evil, and they are trying to end you. So Joe doesn't just kick the ball out of there simply and gracefully to you. He fires it out at 100 miles an hour or 85 miles per hour or 120 miles per hour. And it is variable, and we do that intentionally because they're Death Eaters. All right, so if you haven't yet experienced the Death Eater, those numbers may be exaggerated for miles per hour. All right, next mechanism was a sculpture on top of the pop bumper. This is one of those things that looks fairly simple and fairly straightforward. This is by far the most expensive sculpture in the entire game because of all of the different details that had to go into it. There are a lot of parts that make up this sculpture. I think 4 molds. One of those molds was 7 cavities. Another one was 4 cavities for all the different branches and all the different parts. We did a lot of life testing on this part because it is on one of the most violent parts of a pinball machine, a pop bumper. And I didn't just want to make it a static sculpture of a tree because I did that 14 years ago on Wizard of Oz. This tree, because it's the Whomping Willow and it has a car in it, the Whomping Willow is it moves a lot, so it wiggles. So it's made out of a rubberized material, but that rubberized material also has to hold up a 1964 Ford Anglia. So we couldn't just let that whole thing be rubber. This is overmolded over a steel wire that runs up through one of the main trunk and up through one of the main branches and into the car so that there is stiffness and rigidity inside this and it lasts. And we fired this on top of a pop bumper 1,000,000 times to make sure, over 1,000,000 times, to make sure that it wouldn't fall to pieces. And all of that so the tree branches can wiggle. All right, next and I'm going to go into a little bit of a story on the Protego mech. Every pinball machine that you've ever played had parts that got changed, that weren't the original designer's full concept. I had a mechanism where Protego is now that I thought was going to be the coolest thing ever. Joe told me it was going to suck right away, but I thought it was going to be the coolest thing ever. So it was in the artwork, in the drain lane is Voldemort. It's evil, it's bad, you don't want to drain, blah, there's a bad guy. And over to the left is Harry. And there's a very iconic scene in the fourth film where Harry and Voldemort's wands connect for the first time. And it's a struggle. It's a power struggle. It's a struggle of wills trying to force the magic into the other person. I had this idea for a mechanism that was a power struggle that would move left and right based on how the player was playing. If they were playing really well, then Harry was winning. If you weren't making shots, then Voldy was winning. And what it did is it sat in between the drain and the return. And it got harder and harder, or it got easier and easier. And I thought that was going to be the coolest thing ever. It wasn't. What wound up happening is because of the space in that area, we were only able to get about 1/8 of an inch of movement between these two things. So it was 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, and then it was a ball trap for about an inch. And that was just not fun. So the time that we put into that mech, designing it in SolidWorks, fabricating it in our machine shop, getting Joe to program it, it was a stepper motor, so Duncan was involved on the stepper motor board. All of that time and effort and energy got thrown out because the mech wasn't fun. And a game designer and a game team have to face facts. When something's not fun, you don't keep going with it. What that did, though, is it inspired a really cool mech and a really theme-integrated mech, which is the Protego mech. So Protego, for those of you not a giant nerd in Harry Potter, is the shield charm. And the shield charm protects you from bad curses and bad hexes that the opposing wizard is casting your way. So this mech replaced the power struggle mech that we had with an active pop-up and save mechanism. There you go. And it looks like an insert. And I've seen players walk up to the game for the first time and had no idea that this wasn't an insert. And then it pops up and saves their ball. And it's that little moment, that little magic moment of, whoa, how'd that happen? And for those of you paying attention, the front of the mech that you don't see when it's in the playfield has a line, an arrow starting at the top and going down. And that's the form that you move your wand in when you cast Protego. And yes, I'm a giant nerd, but that's what we do. All right, so I'm not going to go through every rule in Harry Potter. There is a breadth of rules here. However, I put this slide in there to inform everyone that the code in the hall right now is beta 4. When Beta 4 goes live very shortly into production code, that is version 1.0. What that means is that this game has all of its rules implemented. This is code complete. This is a big step for a game team. This has all of our original document that we wrote a year and a half ago or more, fully implemented in the game and fully approved by our licensor, which is a wonderful thing. So if you go to the hall and you put up a monster game, you will be able to experience not one, not two, three, what I would consider four wizard modes. They're all wizard modes. It's Harry Potter, but that's not what I mean. I mean pinball wizard modes. Um, they are in the game, they are playable, and they are really fun. The Deathly Hallows mode, which is not a heavy lift for a average pinball player. It is something you will encounter. It is something that speaks to the Harry Potter fan. When Joe had me come and play this rule for the first time, I was blown away. I had that like goosebumps down the arms when I hear Hermione reading the tale of the Deathly Hallows. And it's a risk reward sort of mode. You're trying to complete these shots, but every time you shoot one of Hermione's shots, you get a score multiplier. But it's a timed mode as well. And so you're doing all of the things and your heart's racing and it's really fun and it's an awesome mode. So that's in the game. The Boy Who Lived, which is the final wizard mode after you've collected all of the Horcruxes by doing all of the major things in the game, that's in there. The Owls multi-ball is in there, which is another really fun mode, and Battle of Hogwarts is a great mode as well. It feels like you are there in the battle. You're having chaos. You're experiencing all of this stuff. Um, that's a mode again where we wanted to make it accessible to average players. That mode will reflex in difficulty. If you have played 100 games, played about 100 games, and you haven't played 4 unique multi-balls in the game, which is how you unlock the Battle of Hogwarts, the game lowers the difficulty so that you only need 3 unique multi-balls. If again you've played another 100 games and you have not accessed the Battle of Hogwarts, it will lower the difficulty again so that just 2 multi-balls played will allow you to experience this wizard mode. I really like that. I really like being able to allow players of all skills to see some of this really crazy cool stuff, which also leads into one of the new ideas that we developed for this game, which is called the Game Changer. The Game Changer is an idea we came up with so that players of varied skills could play head to head against each other in the same game at different difficulties. So there are keychains that ship on the front of your game. They are a QR code. They say easy, normal, or wizard. You hit the start button. You hold up the QR code that you would like to experience. And all of the rules change automatically in the game to change the difficulty. What I really enjoy is I have 2 young boys, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I can put the game on easy mode for player 1 and easy mode for player 2 and wizard mode for player 3, and my kids and I can enjoy the game and it's still a challenge, right? The game is really, really hard on wizard mode, but they have a chance of beating daddy when they're playing on easy mode because the multi-balls are lit right away. The timers are longer. There's a better ball save. It's a really fun idea, and I really hope all of you experience it and bring in those casual players in your life that aren't as good at pinball but want to play the game with you. It's a really fun idea that I think is going to level the playing field for players of all sorts of skills. All right. Next, we're going to talk about the UI. And a user interface is a ton of detail that goes into a game. There are so many things that a modern pinball has that we want the player to understand their status of when they glance up for just a second. So you see different quadrants, different areas of the playfield, or different areas of the back glass that are there to help you understand your game. This screen, however, often speaks to the people around you more than you, because most people are not able to play the game while staring at the 27-inch screen. That is a skill that not everyone has. But having a spotter, having a friend saying, "Oh, you're only 2 banners away from playing Explore Hogwarts Multi-Ball, or you currently have Weasley and Weasley lit at Diagon Alley. If you go there, it'll help you beat your modes. You're almost there for all your ball locks on Golden Trio." All of these elements and items come over the course of months of UI development and getting approval from the licensor. This is one of the biggest areas where the licensor is involved, is all of this content on the screen. A lot of this work was done by Olaf, and Olaf put together a couple of different images that we went through, or different parts we went through during the development here. So this is a fairly quick iteration of the user interface. Couple ideas there that flashed past, right? The way this evolves over the course of months and months, going back and forth with the licensors on what we can do with the content that we are allowed to show on screen, what we want to do, and then how to compromise with them. So there's another element here, which was a concept. A ball lock. We wanted to show Mr. Potter with a ball. And so this was a concept sketch that we put together for them. Like, hey, this would be really cool. We should do this. It's pinball. It's fun. Like, that is really cool. You're not allowed to do that. All right. What if the ball's not floating? What if it's in his hand? How about that? Still cool, still no. Not allowed to do it. Okay. So we got rid of that. We kept it magical. Here's another idea that we went through, which was various forms of our Death Eater. So this is fully animated. This is a rigged object. The original Death Eater is over there on the left, the reference from an image we found in the style guides, replicating this character as best we could based off the reference material. Thought we did a good job. You guys did a great job. Change it. All right. Let's go. What else do we have here? Ah. So there are 2 different versions of this that you see in this slide, but these are not the only 2 versions that we presented to our friends at Warner Brothers. We presented a version that we absolutely loved and thought was going to be the coolest thing ever. And this is one of those things that the team really wanted to do. And I thought it was going to be impossible. Olaf whipped it out in like 4 hours. You did the mock-up, the concept. So the words that Harry is forced to cut into the back of his hand by Miss Dolores Umbridge say, "I must not tell lies." And we wanted to use this for tilt. The letters of the word tilt are in the phrase tell lies. So Olaf took those letters and rearranged them and inscribed in the back of Harry's hand, and it looked perfect. Like it was exactly out of the film. "I must not tilt" was inscribed in the back of Harry's hand. And the team at Warner Brothers said that is one of the coolest things we have ever seen and fits perfectly in your game. Never modify our film footage in any way. All right, we'll just blur out the hand and put tilt across the top. You got it. All right, so I think that's the end of the animations. I would like to talk briefly about, or Olaf, do you have something to add? No? All right. And you guys are welcome to jump in. Sorry, whenever, if you ever want to.
You're doing a great job.
Thanks, Joe. All right, so we get into music, sound, and voice, and Pierce is going to talk during this part, and Mark is going to talk during this part, please. But let me start by the importance of the song. So, Hedwig's Theme by John Williams is the iconic song that you hear, your introduction to the Harry Potter world. That song is not included in the license, because why would it be? That song we had to fight for. I had to fight for. That is a very important song to me as a Harry Potter nerd. Back when I was a wee lad, when these movies were just coming out, um, I really enjoyed them. I enjoyed the books. I waited in line for the books. I waited in line to see the midnight releases. This song, because I am a musician, I taught myself how to play this song on my saxophone. I didn't have music. I just knew the song in my head and I played it and I loved it. And when we found out that this song was not part of the license, it is something that Mr. Guarneri had to go and pursue like a dog with a bone. We would not let this idea die of Harry Potter not including Hedwig's theme. And the licensing costs of this song, I'm not going to give specifics, I'm not going to give numbers. The licensing cost of this song was more than double the entire licensing fee of Godfather. But it made the game. It's that important to me as a game designer that this song be part of this world. We could not hit that start button and not hear that song. It's worth it. All right. Let's get into some of the speech that we had to put in the game, or that we got to put in the game. One of the things that did come with the license was actually the ability to use parts of the movie, which is great, which is not always included in the license, pirates. So, Pierce, why don't you talk a bit about how many speech calls there are in this game?
Hi guys, my name is Pierce Colbert. As Eric said, I'm the sound designer at Jersey Jack, and I've been there since 2023. I'll talk a little bit about the amount of speech calls and sound effects that we have in the game, but for reference, I wanted to give a baseline of how many I had on my first game, which was Elton John. On that game with our narrator Helen, we had in the speech range about 1,800 to 2,000 calls. And on Harry Potter, over the course of 8 movies, which can be about 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes. By the time we got to the end of that game, we had 4,200 callouts, 2,600 of which were with my friend Mark Silk, 1,600 of which were from the movies themselves through combing through them. And the process for that really looked like, honestly, Joe Katz sitting down and watching these movies so many times, entire days spent of watching them and writing out this giant spreadsheet with timestamps and ideas of where we could utilize each of these lines, and then coming to me and saying, hey, get these for me. Now, not all of them ended up making it into the game, just because they weren't all best for the different topics and the different modes that we had for the game, but a lot of them did. And that's without getting into the video sync audio as well. As you know, we have the movie modes. There's 8 movie modes, the wizard modes, all of which have synced video that would need their synced audio. And there's about 337 of those. In the sound effects section, I think there's about 750 sound effects that would play if you had nothing else going on in the game, no speech, no video sync from the movies. And so whereas Elton, I believe, had about 3,000 to 3,500 sounds that could happen in that game at all, here we had a higher number than that in our speech alone. So the job really was, along with Jason, with David Thiel, and with Joe Katz, figuring out the most nuanced way to bring the most iconic lines, the most important lines, and a great sense of direction to a game that has a lot of different modes to it without overwhelming the player or without, making you hear Mark every second for the course of your game. So, yeah, I'm very happy with the way it turned out, but it took a lot of hours of, actually just talking and figuring out what our vision was for this game.
All right. Thanks, Pierce. All right. We are running close out of time, but I did want to get Mr. Mark Silk to talk briefly about how we got hooked up on this project.
Briefly. Oh, good evening. Hi. Yeah. I was so excited. Nearly 2 years ago, I had an email from Eric, and it was the nicest thing I could have had. And he wrote this note saying, "Hi, I'm Eric Meunier," and he told me who he was and what he does. And I'm a big paintball fan, and I thought, I know. And so the chance then to talk to Eric, and once I'd signed my life away and found out what this project was, I was so excited and so proud to be part of this. And the more I spoke to Eric and found out more about the team, but the starting point was Eric, was it meant a lot to me of just how much Harry Potter mattered to you. And the fact that when I started to see the script, or if you imagine printing out Wikipedia, that's pretty much what this was across many sessions. And we had a lot of fun. But I've watched a lot of games and TV shows and films and stuff, and even Cashier number 2, please. But with this, what I loved was the fact that it was written in the style, in the world of Harry Potter. So if you're a pinball fan, you're gonna love the game because it's a great game, and it got all the stuff you need to make it work efficiently and in a way that builds and is exciting. And if you're a Harry Potter fan, it will talk to you because it's a new adventure in the world of Harry Potter, and you make it your adventure in the world of Harry Potter. And that's what I try to bring to this. And I'm really proud of what I've done, and I'm really proud of where you let me bring this and where you took it to. Because we sort of started with one idea, but in the end, what you hear in the game is kind of a new voice in the world of Harry Potter. And I played it for the first time properly in here, and to see the whole thing come together and to see your work and everyone, the whole team together. I just want to say thank you, and thank you, Jack, as well, because nearly 2 years ago I was at IAPA, the trade show in Orlando for theme parks. They built a roller coaster in this building. It's amazing. But Jack came up to me and just tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "It's great to have you on board." And Jack, thank you for that. It meant the world to me. I've got such respect for what you do and what you brought to pinball. So thank you, everyone.
All right. I would love to host a Q&A on Harry Potter. Unfortunately, we are out of time. However, myself and my coworkers will be in our booth. Please, if you have questions, come find us. But I will not take any time over because this next event is very important to me. Thank you.